After the successful release of the first Kingdom Hearts game on the PlayStation 2, things gradually start to get more complicated for the Disney Square crossover series. Logically, the next game released should have been Kingdom Hearts 2, which was going to take a while to release, so the Game Boy Advance got a game in the form of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. This game would set up the story of Kingdom Hearts 2, as well as feature different takes on exploration, combat, leveling up, and so on in the form of cards. It got remade later on for the PlayStation 2 and had a worldwide release on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 in the Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 Remix collection. This remake is the one being analysed in this review. The story takes place right after the first Kingdom Hearts game, except Sora's voice broke?
I'd like to see it too, along with any other worlds out there. I want to see them all.
Seriously? Me too. One look at this castle, and I just knew. Our very best friends. They're here.
That is because this remake features voice acting and updated graphics. The settings look similar to how they did on the Game Boy Advance, which generally consist of the ominous Castle Oblivion and the Disney worlds from the first game such as Wonderland and Agrabah. The catch is, the visits to each of these Disney worlds are created from Sora's memories, and the characters barely remember each other. Sora does gradually remember a girl named Naminé, and learns she is trapped in Castle Oblivion. It is up to him with the help of Donald and Goofy to rescue her, but the troubles with remembering things, not to mention hooded fingers from an enigmatic organization, means this is no pleasant trip down memory lane. The story is quite possibly the best aspect of the game, except the Disney World stories are not necessarily that compelling, and differ from the source material more so than in the original Kingdom Hearts. The most important moments take place in Castle Oblivion, and are generally compelling in spite of the repetitive castle room backdrops and the occasionally cheesy or poorly done dialogue and voice acting. The theme of memories being lost, altered, manipulated and recreated is also fairly interesting. The production values are similar to the remake of the first Kingdom Hearts game, in that the characters and settings are sometimes lacking in detail, yet they are still good to look at. The music is mostly the same as before, which is somewhat disappointing, with the exception of some new tracks that really set the mood. The gameplay that consists of exploring various worlds and engaging in hack-and-slash combat against enemies is similar to before, but with a, obviously, massive difference. Cards. You learn the general mechanics of the cards when you visit the first world of Traverse Town. Any Kingdom Hearts veterans will surely feel at home in Traverse Town, but that comfort zone may gradually be broken as you go through a fairly overwhelming tutorial. Sora, Donald and Goofy have forgotten their skills and abilities, to the point of Sora's friends having to be activated by cards. It's overwhelming to the point where it's hard to cover the card system succinctly in this review, but let's give it a try. Instead of essentially button mashing the X button until an enemy meets its demise, each swipe of Sora's trusty Keyblade is activated by a card. This also applies to magic, items and summons. Each card has a value of 0 to 9, with a higher value breaking an opponent's lower value card. You can use a combination of cards to increase that value dramatically, with specific combinations of card types and numbers giving you special abilities or slates, such as Sonic Blade. However, you have to obtain these slates first, and they are not usable on all enemies, such as airborne ones for example. While it's not bad in theory to depart from the button mashing combat from the first game, this system is very flawed, to the point of being somewhat poorly designed. First of all, enemies, especially bosses and top tier enemies, can easily and quickly break your cards regardless of the highest values you place. This means you have to break the system with slates and whatnot, to mostly have a chance of winning. Not good design. Also, the fact that combat takes place in real time is frustrating. While games are surely designed for people to dart their eyes around everywhere and learn motor skills and multitasking mostly without realizing it, Chain of Memories is not a good example. First of all, choosing a card while moving around can potentially lead to panicky situations. Cards with rank 0 can break any opposing card or combo if played after the opposing card or combo, but they can be broken by any card or combo as well if it is played after the 0 card is played. That explanation about 0 cards was copied from Wikipedia and is surely not a good idea for real-time combat. Plus, you have to reload cards when your deck runs out, which takes at least a few uninterrupted seconds, and longer the more you reload your deck. However, What can potentially make up for all these flaws is the ability to customize decks yourself. There is just something so quietly satisfying about arranging your cards in the right order. You have to increase the number of cards you have in your deck, represented by card points or CP, by leveling up in combat. But considering the aforementioned flaws, that, combined with the option to choose a helpful slate upgrade instead, should be the least of your worries. Cards are also used in exploration, and this throws the general open world exploration of the first Kingdom Hearts game out the window. To be fair, this is due to the constraints of the Game Boy Advance. But the fact that the game is basically dumbed down to going through rooms can be quite repetitive and dull. While the rooms in the Game Boy Advance were done in an isometric perspective, the third-person camera perspective makes them look extremely bland and repetitive in the remake. There are map cards which are used for room synthesis. Basically, you make the rooms appear yourself. The doors, a few of which you have to go through to progress the story, are organised in a specific pattern, but it's up to you what lies beyond that door. Depending on which colour cards you choose, the room could feature anything ranging from deliberately few enemies to changing the power of your card deck for combat. The further you progress through the game, not to mention go through plot-specific doors or doors with secrets and treasures, the higher the value or values of the cards required. There is a limit to the number of map cards you can carry, but that's not a problem. What is a problem is the grindy nature of the room synthesis combined with the combat system. When you complete a world, you can't go back to it, except you have to recreate the rooms. At least map cards are plentiful and obtained after combat. To engage in combat, you have to come into contact with an enemy in the field to go to a battle screen, so you can start using your combat cards against them. You can avoid enemies as well as hit them with a keyblade to give yourself an advantage, but the controls, camera and lock-on system can make this hard to do. Plus, doing that over and over again to start a battle becomes extremely repetitive. One of the most grindy aspects of the room synthesis is the use of a Moogle shop and treasures. Basically, creating a Moogle shop room allows you to go talk to those adorable things and buy random cards as well as sell cards you don't need. Random cards. Yeah. If there are certain cards you want, especially for certain slates, then good luck having to go through Moogle shops or treasure chests and recreating rooms over and over again to get that one card. Yeah, it's essentially a collectible card game. Much of the card system does make sense, perhaps more so in theory, especially for a handheld game, and can be fun sometimes, but this is ultimately the game's biggest downfall. There is nothing wrong with trying something different, but execution is another matter. Much of the gameplay mechanics would have probably worked better with turn-based combat, which, despite being even more of a departure from the traditional action RPG combat of the first Kingdom Hearts, may have been more playable. When looking at the mechanics and learning them through the tutorial, it does feel overwhelming, perhaps more so for a younger audience. But once you understand it, you can just break the system easily to the point where it seems like that's the only way to progress. But the possibility of having to grind to do that is really tiresome. If you have enough attack cards, the appeal of button mashing from the first Kingdom Hearts game is still intact, with quiet moments devoted to customizing card decks being a fun change of pace. The game is not as long as the first Kingdom Hearts. There is even another mode unlocked after completion titled Reverse/Rebirth, where you don't play as Sora, and there are slight differences to gameplay such as predetermined card decks. The remake of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories is generally available on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 collections alongside games like Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts 2, which means you could play it for a few hours maybe and see what you think, and probably on an easier difficulty. It is quite possible that this game is better on the Game Boy Advance, which I haven't played, and that would mean this review isn't complete. But if the card system, exploration and story are intact, minus the improved production values, then there is not much of a point in playing this game, other than the story, which is probably the best aspect of the game. If anything, you should just read or watch the story on the internet to familiarise yourself with the series, or prepare for Kingdom Hearts 2.